Hey everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today is another LEGO Top 10 Mocks of the Week episode. Now, last week I didn't actually have a Sunday episode, so this week it's going to be a little bit bigger. It's not a top 20 necessarily. I'm still going to go for my 10 favorite, but I've got a ton more creators linked in the description below if you want to check them out. And just in general, people have not slowed down one iota when it comes to amazing LEGO creations. There's a particularly large LEGO convention last week as well, so I know there are some builders kind of holding off on showing off some of their amazing creations, which are now all available. So anyways, the pictures you see flashing by the screen are all awesome, great, and amazing, but technically not the top 10 that I've chosen. So anyways, I highly recommend you check out all the links in the description below if you want to see more of the content that come from these awesome designers from all around the world. And before we jump into the very first mock of the week, I'd just like to say that the custom creation that has gone up in our web store this week is the V-19 Torrent Starfighter. From what I understand, it was present in many of the Clone Wars battles for the Galactic Republic, and despite its wonky shape, it was actually a pretty formidable fighter. The designer Thomas Jenkins knocked this one out. It looks amazing with the snotting technique, the studs not on top, and if you did want to build this for yourself, the instructions can be found at our web store. That's www.brickvault.toys. Getting instructions from us is a great way to help support what we do here at the channel. And alright, it is now time to jump into the top 10 mocks of the week. There is no best to worst order. I just kind of show the 10 creations in whatever order I sort of feel like. You guys tell me which ones you thought were the best. And right out, here is number 10 counting down. From CarterWhits, we have the build Arriving Home. To be honest, this build is slightly nostalgic for me. It looks very similar to a small mosque that I used to be next to when I was in Malaysia, and a lot of the details are very similar, including the short stone wall right next to the open ocean. The techniques employed here are absolutely wonderful. I like the build for the doorways with those arch pieces. The fact that that front stone wall is canted backwards ever so slightly is a wonderful little bit of detailing, and this model has a fully fleshed out interior as well as rooftop scene. It looks like just about every plant and tree was built in a slightly different way, making this whole thing feel very vibrant and alive. And let's jump on to number 9. From the designer Eero O'Konen, we have the LEGO built character Kiris Ogononblick. That's the best I'm doing for pronunciation, but wow, look at this thing. It is probably the most colorful build of the week, though there's a really colorful one that's coming up a little later. Let's break it down with just the brick built character. It looks like we've got a female with very long lime green hair. Those tooth and horn pieces that make up the hair is a really wonderful effect. I'm going to assume those are high heels, and maybe those pink toes are made of lipstick pieces, though I can't be sure. And probably my favorite bit of build detailing for the character itself is the use of those light blue fin pieces, like the airplane tail fin, as the edge of the jacket. Now, when it comes to her carp speeder, you can totally understand why he calls it a carp. Look at the face of the speeder, looks like a carp. I actually thought it was a catfish at first, but I suppose those animals are somewhat similar from the front. And besides that point, the speeder itself, it's long, it's flowing, it's got these weird sort of obtuse shapes sticking out of it, and of course very colorful like our character. And this designer makes some amazing larger brick built characters like this if you want to check more out. Now moving down to number 8, from Nick Brick, he has replicated Brian May's Red Special. In the rock and roll world, this is a very famous guitar, maybe possibly the most famous, I'm not sure. Brian May, the lead guitarist for Queen, built it with his dad and his family when he was 17 years old, so amongst guitar enthusiasts it's got a lot of interesting, quirky, special features, and for rock and roll aficionados it holds some renown considering the guy who played it. So anyways, it's only fitting that somebody would make this thing out of Lego bricks, considering it was a handmade tool by the artist themselves, and Nick Brick did an absolutely amazing job knocking this thing out. From what I can tell, it looks like you can hold this thing without too much of a problem. It's not just a display piece, and it looks like our builder here actually got a bit of an award at Bricks in the 6 when presenting. So congrats to Nick Brick for making such an awesome build. Also, the microphone's pretty darn cool. I like the use of the undersides of the studs that make up the texture of what I assume is kind of a mesh of metal that goes around the outside of the mic there. And as you can tell, Nick Brick is pretty happy with this creation, and I certainly would be too if I managed to put something this cool looking together. Congrats on the award, and let's move down to the next one. This is a micro build of the Monroe County Courthouse in Iowa. Designed by Chris Madison, it was built for the Albia's Restoration Days celebration. In terms of a LEGO build commemorating a real structure, there's hardly any other builds that I think really capture such a wonderful look. Perhaps on its own, this courthouse building by itself may not look quite as impressive when when built in a vacuum, but resting within the open park with all of the pathways leading to it, with a few wonderful little designs for other types of tree builds, you end up getting an incredible looking piece. In terms of commemorative or even commissioned builds, this is probably one of the best designs I've seen for a pre-existing building, and I also appreciate that he got it to look so darn good without using what I assume for the most part are too many difficult or outstanding techniques. In fact, my bet is that the most difficult part of the build was getting some of those different tree designs, which by the way look amazing. And alright, moving down to number 6, let's build up the scale just ever so slightly, and by ever so slightly I mean by an absolute massive amount. I think this is the largest one of the week. We're looking at Patrick Macy's Stormholm Castle. Here are some fun facts provided by the designer. It took nearly a year to build, with a rough estimate of 40,000 pieces that make up the final project. Now, like so many extremely large builds, it's hard to get into every single specific detail that you might like. This is definitely something that you would want to look at and slowly but surely notice small hidden details on your own and appreciate the fun little techniques that make it into this complete looking world that's been created. I would like to say that I appreciate that the designer went for a more realistic color tone when it came to the buildings, but of course he broke up the overall look of this design with lots of different colorful trees, kind of showing that autumn is on its way, and you've got a few different, or actually it looks like just one different lavender looking bush that seems to be blooming. It breaks up the piece nicely with color, yet it doesn't make it look fantastical or, let's say, out of the ordinary. The stonework used to create the very large rounded turrets makes this thing feel very realistic, and I don't know, there's just a lot of fun details to really get lost in, like the castle blending into the rock side, the rock face in one corner, the broken away roof pieces on both of the different huts, and the swamp also, just like the bushes and plants, breaks up the look of the model a bit more, making this landscape feel once again a little bit unique compared to a lot of other medieval landscapes with giant castle builds that we see pretty much all the time. So awesome job, Patrick Macy. Highly recommend you guys check out this builder and every builder we talk about in the description below. And then number 5, moving down the line, we've got a build from Jonas Cram, and the official title is Barbs Disappearing. So for context, this is a specific scene from the Netflix show Stranger Things season 1, and there's a bit of a meme about Barb. They did just release her as an exclusive fig for San Diego Comic-Con, but that's not really relevant. What's relevant is that we have a different house, not the buyer's house, but built in a similar context as to how the Stranger Things set that just came out was built, though it's a very different construction for the house. The trees, I believe, had to be a little bit bigger because this is a much taller design for a house, and it functions very much the same way where you can just flip the whole thing over. Personally, my favorite aspects of this design is the build for the pool, and you can even see the level of the water built in there, which is nice. The dirt detailing feels a bit more complete, and I like that there's a bit of a wider gap between the houses on this model compared to the sets, and that is of course because you had to have a bit of space for the pool, and the use of those very long tile pieces that make up the woodwork on the side of the house just looks awesome. Number 4 is from a new designer that I had not discovered until this week. From Kang Hyun, we have the latest build, Familiar number 5, and this is one build out of a series of 5 familiar builds which all look like different scenes from areas in Vietnam, and possibly all Saigon, though it's really hard to tell. From looking a little bit further back, there is a specific area that's actually 20 minutes away from where I used to live in Ho Chi Minh City that I never knew existed. Man, these are some really awesome builds. You can see here there is one piece used that's not official Lego, and that is the glass sheet, which makes a wonderful reflection. Wait a second, we're not talking about this build. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. We are talking about this one. A signature style of this designer that I really like is that you can see quite a bit into the bottom of the stand. It makes the build feel a little bit more grounded, no pun intended, but yeah, you can see pipes and different bits of the earth and vines and stuff like that, which is fun to see. And that also matches up very well with this particular one because there is a lot of construction happening with a little wall that's been cornered off, a lavender or pink construction vehicle, which is kind of fun. And then also, I love this touch, but it's a light up scene, which is battery powered, and it's the battery pack has been integrated pretty seamlessly with the external power lines. At first, I didn't really realize it was there, but now I can see that it fits really well. And anyways, there's just a lot of fun uses of pieces here. I like the wheel well pieces that make up the little rain cover in the front. I always appreciate a nice use for brick separators. And then somebody tell me what this weird Lego piece is. I'm assuming that's an official Lego piece, though it looks like it could belong to a very old set. That would be my guess. And from what I understand, it's a rain cover, but it could be supposed to look look like riveted metal. Not totally sure. All right, now moving down to number 3, we've had a lot of water-based designs already. There's still one more to come, but I think this is my favorite use of a water-built surface, is this particular one here, Crossing the Styx by Ralph Langer. This is also a build that's part of a larger series of designs, one of which we've already shown, I believe, in a previous episode. But what's so nice about this murky dark water is that it's a combination of trans black and black bricks that are used to kind of make it look dark but a little bit murky, like you can see through it. Has a very liquidy feel to the whole build, and then you can just see the rocks and kind of dark foreboding trees in the distance. This is a larger collaboration between him, Wookiee Warrior, Simon NH, and Marcel V. I think all designers that we have featured before in the past, and they are on their way to hell, so things maybe actually will be getting a lot darker after this particular scene, even though this does look relatively foreboding in general. Just some wonderful designs though that make up the trees, the rocks, and the water. Now this next build is something that has been making the rounds amongst the community for I think a week or two now, and for good reason. It's an absolutely amazing build from an amazing designer. I did say we were going to get something more colorful later down the line, and that is definitely the case with this. The official title is We Built This City by the designer Paul Hetherington. I can remember seeing and featuring a build of his from quite a long time ago and then accidentally didn't hit the follow button, which was a huge mistake on my part. We saw his Joker Theater a long time ago, and since then he has been knocking out some amazing stuff, and even before then. But anyways, I do want to focus just on this build for this episode because holy guacamole, just look at the colors. Look at it. The black outline for a lot of the buildings does a good job of really containing each section kind of having its own fun, unique color combination. And there's a very blocky, boxy, angular theme to a lot of the buildings, though the actual construction of each area is pretty darn different. You have windowsills for some areas. A lot of the colorful boxes have been set inwards ever so slightly, while some surfaces are relatively flat. And I think from a composition feel, there's just enough similarities to give a very, very complete stylistic feel to this model, while also avoiding any type of monotonous or repetitive designs that could make this whole design feel stale. He really does have an incredible eye for breaking up and making a large build feel even larger. In the description it says that the overall look was inspired by the style of graffiti and cartoon line drawings, which I certainly don't doubt, and also that robot is made entirely, what looks like entirely, of flat silver pieces, of which I don't think are actually custom pieces. I mean, I think that is just a relatively uncommon slope piece that he has managed to find just a massive amount of. Anyways, I highly recommend you check out his Flickr in the description below, as well as everybody else, but highly recommend you check out Paul's Flickr in the description below. And now the last build, the top one of the week, is actually two different builds. They were released at the same time by Vince Telos, and they were both at the Fanabrick 2019 exhibition. I'm gonna start by talking about the first one that I saw, which is the Stopover at the local greengrocers, a relatively simplistic name for a not so simplistic build. My instincts tell me that this spaceship was somewhat loosely based on that ship that you saw from the Solo movie, though its design is relatively entirely different. The larger hull pieces that I think came from very large shipping container ships look great, that stick out and they jut forward, and you can see that the spaceship itself is just a series of what looks like apartment buildings, kind of. It's a fun combination of very familiar architectural styles combined with some sci-fi gizmo stuff, with a lot of course, very colorful and interesting characters, and it seems that this ship is hovering above a nice little local market, getting some fun organic fruit that's been growing. Just even the island around the bottom is great. You can see some crops, solar panels and stuff like that, with just a little windmill water tank and some shaded areas for covering the fruit and the people selling them. The ship itself is very ornate. I love the dark blue, and this scene is just wonderful. I suppose it really is just some people stopping over to pick up some nice fresh groceries. Now this next one is called Birdman City, and in the actual Fanabrick convention, it looks like he displayed both of these together in the same world, which of course is why I'm talking about both of them as the single one for top 10 MOCs of the week. Birdman City is so fun because the characters are mostly brick built, though you still have them roughly close to the same size as LEGO minifigures, but they are Birdmen. The heads come from the Legends of Chima characters, and you can see some familiar armor pieces as well as capes, but for the most part everything else is brick built. They all look really funny and unique, and it really makes this whole world and this whole little civilization or group stand apart so much more compared to the counterparts across the pond. As for their residence, it looks like a downed ship has been stuck aground but with the back end sticking out, and this has slowly but surely adapted into their main hangout. Wonderful building techniques have been used for both this design as well as the grocery stop, and if you haven't checked out Vince Delos or any of the guys that I've talked about in this episode, I highly recommend you check on all of those different mystery tabs that we have linked in the description below. Remember, if you enjoy our content, you can always like or subscribe. Thanks for watching, everybody. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to check out all these cool creative people that are making awesome things out of Lego, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault. Hey everybody, just popping in really quick, wanted to let you know that we have a LEGO web store, www.brickvault.toys, where we sell the PDF step-by-step instructions for some very high quality LEGO MOCs. It's definitely worth checking out. The revenue from the web store helps support us here at the channel, as well as the incredibly talented designers that work so hard to make these amazing LEGO builds. So if you want to check that out, it is www.brickvault.toys. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.